Hey guys, Thomas the Solution here, aka Mustached Tom, here to do something very different from something I typically do, and that is typically review movies and do Let's Plays. Now, for those of you who may not know, in 2014, or around that era, I published a superhero book called Syndicate X, which you can see the right of the cover right there. That was written by me, Thomas Marcillo Jr., again also known as Mustached Tom, and for the longest time I did not know that I had reviews for this book that I published back in that era. Some of these reviews are more current, and some of the reviews are, from 1 star to 5 stars. We got quite a few mixed reviews here, a mesh of them, if you were, and I'm here to go over all of them to try to do quite a few things. Is one, to do a public sort of evaluation of my own work, which is something I don't see a lot of people do very often. And I suppose, in a way, mayhaps defend what I want to defend in terms of the material in the book, and propose even questions about the reviews in terms of trying to engage you, the audience. If you or yourself are a reviewer or a writer, I want to put this video in a way that can hopefully be beneficial to either of those categories. So we're going to go in order from top to bottom. So our first review is from a woman named Vicky. She has done 101 reviews, and her review has been spoiled. This entire review has been hidden because of spoilers, so we're going to go ahead and click that. Alright. So we're just gonna expand a little bit. Okay. So I just want to reiterate, I wrote this book in 2014, so I was relatively a lot younger, because I do see that the whole thing about sex is in this, so I do want to make sure that that's very clear. Alright, so, and I quote from her, "The synopsis of this book seemed interesting. I was intrigued, but then I started reading, and not only was I constantly confused about who was talking, and I'll stop there. What I believe I did is, whenever a new character would talk, I would indent a new paragraph and say, this person is talking, insert their name here and is talking, is saying something. So I'm not sure what that's referring to, much at any given point. And as she describes, it felt like it was written by a young teenage boy that had just discovered what sex was and tried to cram everything he just saw in porn into the wildest action of fantasy." So again, I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to make of that, other than I was young at the time, and in terms of sexual content rather, how does one write it in such a way that comes across as, like, I suppose natural, instead of what she seems to be implying here? Like it's a first time thing, I suppose. Again, I'm not really sure what that part of the review is meant to mean specifically. Anyway, we're gonna move on to the next review, because I don't know much else to say about that review in particular. So I'll go ahead and skip the ad. We have a 2-star review by Bogote D, who doesn't have a lot of reviews, so mayhaps this is the first review, maybe. I'm going to go ahead and click that right away. So this begins with saying the perfect audience for this play, which it's a book, is a teenage fan of video games and role-playing games. Funny enough, when I was originally writing, or not even writing this, drawing it as a kid, my original dream was for this to be a video game. No joke. Like, that was the original intent. Was it for it to be a video game? Like, that was my childhood dream. No joke. Alright, so, moving on. The novel is pure action and fantasy. Yes, that is. There's a lot of action. It's a superhero book. And fantasy, obviously. Although it also has a lot of violence and some sexual scenes. Alright? From my point of view, it is a novel written from the taste of its author. But without thinking too much about those who would read it. By those who would read it, my inclination was a younger, like a, middle, like growing up, young adult audience. Maybe that did not fulfill its quota, I suppose, is what I'm trying to gauge from that. I say this because, although I am not a fan of the long descriptions of scenes and features, the almost absence of these is not good for achieving a more complete narrative style. I'm not sure what that means. So, the long descriptions, that sounds like a good thing, maybe, of scenes and features that are the almost absence of these is not good for achieving a more complete narrative style. I'm not, the clarity needs to be a little bit more substantive in terms of what I'm trying to understand, because I'm not really sure what that means. It deserves to be read. Wow, that's a but I also think it deserves to be rewritten. Well, thank you for saying that, because I am rewriting it. Anyways, I was doing that before I even knew these reviews were here. So thank you for pointing that out. Trying to work on the details and depth of the characters and history raised. So yes, that is something I am currently working on. So thank you for reinforcing something I am currently working on anyway. So this one was put on in 2020 by a Daniel Greaves, who has done 268 reviews with a 1 star. The premise, without the E, and description of the book is what drew me in. Superheroes, fantasy, and a world which needs them. What could be better? However, I quickly realized this book isn't written very well. Okay. From a spelling mistake in the dedication, which I actually noticed at some point, to the sentences not making sense in the first chapter. I wish that this individual would give a example of that. That's one thing that reviewers, I think, should do when they are making a very clear statement like that. That would help me really narrow down like what is being referred to there. The descriptions are very bland, and some sentences are too short. Now, that's a bizarre criticism. Some sentences are too short. I mean, would that mean in dialogue? Because that, I mean, I would say, well, some people would talk that way. Does she mean in the narrative portion? Because I'm pretty sure I tend to describe each, or from what I can remember, the scenes fairly well. the book lacks emotion. What does that mean? And I was unable to feel the passion for writing. I've been writing all of my life. I've been wanting to do this. Now, when I published the book back then, I want to make it clear that someone had told me that I could never publish a book, so I was actually enraged. That was one of the emotions, and that perhaps is what led me to not edit it as well as I probably should have. So I do agree with her in terms of like maybe some of the structure of the writing could have been better, but again, I would have preferred at least like an example, at the very least, at minimum one. It seemed like a school project, which I was in school while I was writing this, so though technically it wasn't, it was something I wanted to do. Because of the issues with writing, it's very hard to follow and very hard to enjoy. The idea of the story is great, but the writing needs some work, which again, I'm redoing the book anyway, so that is something quite present. Anyway, this reviewer is Asfert Shing, and I apologize if I mispronounce any names, by the way. This was done in 2021 with 6 reviews under the belt, and this is 2 stars. Syndicate X, a book that I tried so hard to finish. The book of Zeke, Jessica, Tony, Josh, which are the characters, and others follow a quite broken trajectory. What does that mean? I would like some clarity, so let's see if he clarifies what that means. The book becomes predictable. It's after certain chapters. What does that mean? And one thing I don't like about that particular critique is that is predictability that bad necessarily? Like if something was set up so good and you're like, oh, I know what it is, can't that also equate to a level of enjoyment? Like that could go either way, so I'm not sure what that means. I would that would, to me, that needs a more of a clarification of like, it's predictable because of this and this. Like I would need something and then why that predictability was that comes across as boring or something. Like that's the full extent of what I would need for that critique to come across as anything helpful to me as the writer of the book. All right. After certain chapters, someone who is regular reader of genre will find the emotional appeal missing. So there's someone else who's saying the emotional appeal is missing. The setting of Raucalia, which, by the way, I've changed the name of the world at this point. It's Raucalum at this point in rewriting it. Is interesting at first glance, but if you delve deeper, the story and character building aspects are missing. That is, the character building aspects are missing. I would again make an example of like, what do you mean by that? Which makes the reader relatable to one of its characters in the end. Was that a good thing that he said? Hold on. But if you delve deeper, the story building and character building aspects are missing, which makes the reader relatable to one of its characters. What? That sentence doesn't make any sense. It's like negative, but positive end result? What? I'm sorry, but this review is a little bit hard to follow. Isn't the reader being able to be relatable to one of its characters a good thing? In the end, read this book only if you are interested in teenage adventure type storytelling, which again, that's sort of the trajectory of what I wanted to publish anyway. So again, I'm not sure why that's a negative. Alright, Yosilla in 2020 with 213 reviews. This is a short review. The idea of the book is awesome. Profanity and the tiring, mindless sex could have been avoided. Now, that is an interesting sentence, because I completely disagree with the profanity aspect. And maybe I can work on the sex thing a little bit, but the profanity thing I disagree with. And the why I disagree with that is that I wanted to make a sort of a statement, as it were, at the time, that with a world that was lawless and chaotic, so too would the very nature of how people behave in that world would follow a very profanity heavy driven world, because there's no order, there's no sense of, like, decency in this area. So I don't believe the book is for mature readers. It's more for teenagers and young adults who are into games, sci-fi thrillers, or something like that. Again, this is like the again, I'm keep getting the thing that I was targeting. But what do you mean it's not for mature readers? It specifically has profanity and sex, so how could you follow that up with it's not for mature readers? That doesn't make any logical sense, sir. I'm sorry, but that review did have a little bit of a as well as a tip top of a... What do you mean? Alright. So, 1 star. 30 reviews. Missed Bandwagon. I'm gonna go ahead and click that. Alright, this review starts with, and I'm already gonna say this, never start your review like this. I am not quite sure how to start this review. Cut that sentence out of your review. There you go. There's my advice. I want to be kind yet constructive, firm, and as well as forgiving. The age of the author is irrelevant, but the age in which someone begins to write without proper practice and an understanding of storytelling is very obvious. So again, I was relatively on the younger age of when I was writing this, still in school. I think the author needs to take more lessons on the fundamentals, which is an interesting thing, because I actually won an award-winning writer, at least 3rd place. So I'm not sure if that's necessary for me, if I am also recognized as, at least in my state, as that at a point. I don't know. Before continuing to write more stories, the format is like that of someone just learning how to write and just learning how to world build, which I would completely disagree with. I'm pretty sure, at least even in my original publication of this, I'm pretty sure I set up a lot of the world very early on. And in fact, I do so before even introducing any of the characters, so I'm a little bit... I wish you would, say, what could be improved from the world building that is already there, instead of just saying that it lacks that completely, because I can't help but disagree with that, because it's simply not true. But perhaps the task of world building is too much too soon, and I don't know what that means. I remember being young, inexperienced writer, and saw some of those same mistakes that I used to make at the time. This is why I must be forgiving. When you have so much story to tell that is just spots on a page without rhyme or reason. Now, one thing I will say about that, which is interesting, is that whenever I would start writing and stop, when I would, get back to where I was, I would be able to quickly, be able to continue plotting and all that stuff pretty significantly quickly, which he mentions plot, so that's why I mentioned it. Unfortunately, storytelling, especially one with a magnificent plot of this magnitude isn't all fun and games. It requires you to study your own characters, their motivation, problems, big and small, defiant and reoccurring. I would encourage the author to not even write, but to study writing by reading short stories and how a lot of information can be explained in a short few pages. And again, I wish I would gotten an example of what would be conceived as short, because I would usually dedicate like an entire paragraph to like a character, like their basic, structure of who they are. That's how I would surmise the scenes in the paragraphs, in terms of like, building up the area that we are currently in. Like I would dedicate an entire paragraph to that. So again, I would like an example of what she means by that as well. So again, to reviewers out there specifically, please provide examples, because otherwise the writers of these stories aren't going to be able to make much of informed decisions on how to better edit their content, and that's what explicitly I want to do. But if I don't know what I can improve on, if I don't see the space in which I can improve upon these things specifically, then I just kind of have to best guess and kind of just go all over the place and kind of figure it out, which is a lot more work than I think I would need. Alright, so the three major components that made me give it such a low score are pacing, characterization, and space-time disconnection. And I assume she means whenever I do a flashback, which I always, whenever it's a first paragraph for a flashback, I say this many years ago, and then whenever that paragraph is ended, I say we're currently in the new time, the current timeline. So I was pretty sure I kept that rather consistent, not to confuse the audience, but I guess it mayhaps still did. I don't know. So what's left is pacing and characterization. I'm not sure what she means by pacing, in terms of does it come across as too slow or too fast? Maybe. Oh, I'm reading a little bit ahead, and we're getting into some really interesting stuff with this review. To be concise, I'm just going to list the issues the author must fix. Paragraphs need to be broken down. Reading large chunks of text is hurtful to the eyes. What? But like you know what a paragraph is, right? Like at minimum, a paragraph. By the way, this from where she writes paragraph to where she writes format, that is not a paragraph. By the way, a paragraph is at minimum 5 sentences. This is 3 sentences. This is not a paragraph. So please learn what you're talking about before you criticize somebody else about paragraphs. At minimum, a paragraph needs to be 5 sentences. Let me repeat that. 5 sentences, okay? Again, I'm someone who's taken writing classes. I know. I've been explicitly told that. So again, please consider what you're writing when you're writing it, on top of that. Especially when reading on an e-reader, which I really can't do anything about that. That wasn't my choice to, how to read the book, I suppose. Dialogue needs to be broken down in a typical book format. Please give an example of what that means, because again, whenever a new person is speaking, I usually paragraph it down so that it's like, this person is now talking, Alright. So we have number 1. The author doesn't allow the characters to be without or lack the hardship. That is an unfinished sentence. The author doesn't allow the characters to be without or lack. Lack what? Alright, so we don't know. The hardship is their backstory, but everything else comes incredibly easy. Now let me stop there. The entire point of the book is the backstory. The entire point of the book is the formation of this team, and thus setting up each member of their team and understanding their backstory is the entire point of the book. So the hardship of the backstory is literally everything. What comes after that, the incredibly easy part, that's after the fact. That's completely irrelevant. So I'm not really sure what I would have to fix in that regard, because the whole point is to establish who these characters are, why they're even grouping together. That's giving their backstories to format, because this is a new thing. Like, you have to understand that this is a new story with new characters. I have to illustrate why their backstories are so important, because that is the foundation of the entire book. Having everything work out perfectly to move the plot along smoothly does not make a good story. Again, I would like an example of what she means move perfectly, because the team themselves cause a lot further chaos in slew of some of their in slew of the current timeline stuff. Just to give an example, there's a scene in my book, I'm pretty sure it's in the 2014 version as well, where the team literally steals a plane from the Capitol building. That's supposed to be things working out perfectly. They steal a plane. Like, they're running for their lives, essentially. Like, they are making their work that much harder for themselves by doing it this way. But the main character is like, yeah, this is gonna be fun. And they don't even know how to fly a plane. They land based on just extremely, really fast, paced decision making at the end of that sequence. So again, I would like a specific example like the one I gave right there, and say, okay, so what about that what about that comes across as quote-unquote perfect? What about that resonates, that word, And how could I build further tension, build further, some sort of, problem for the heroes to overcome, stuff like that. So life is full of resistance, and even the strongest individuals need some sort of setback, great or small. And again, all of the setbacks, or the majority of them, happen in the past. That's the crux of it. So again, that's there in the book. It's in their backstories. That's the whole point. Alright, so this one, oh boy, this is where things get really interesting. Number 2, extremely, with all caps, sexist. Alright, so I'm just going to read the entire thing, and then we're going to go over this. Alright. The girls in this story are either an lustful, by the way, you could just put a lustful sex symbol, or some defenseless waif. I'm not sure what that word means. Waiting for the men to make decisions for them. The female sex, let me correct you, lacks agency in their motivation. Motivations are ruled by sex or the male gaze. Their actions and speech should sound as if someone who doesn't understand women, doesn't talk to women, and does not hold much respect for women is controlling them to do their bidding for the male gaze. I find it distasteful that the female characters go through just as much as the males, if not worse, but their image is pristine and beautiful for male consumption despite their surroundings. Okay, so that's a lot to take in. So this is one of the things where I was like, okay, let's really digest some of the scenarios we are talking about here. So, let's go thing by thing now, and let's really dissect this, because boy oh boy. So first of all, I in good faith, I hope you mean the women in this story first and foremost are either there for like, first of all, let's use our words properly again, please, because I don't want people to assume that I'm using girls in a sexful way. That's very predatorial, that again, to come across that way. So I want to be very clear that this ought to be the woman, first of all, in the story are either a lustful sex symbol or some defenseful waif, again, not sure what that word means, waiting for the man to make the decisions for them. So let's go over that first. Defenseless waif. So let's go over one of the first action sequences in the entire book, shall we? Right? So it's the main character and his girlfriend. They are set up from the get-go to be that. That is the, that is our one of our sets of characters, right? Alright, so let's see how she's defenseless. So they see a group of raiders come across them, the two of them, like a group, like 20 of them, right? So they both step forward, and she's the one who says, "Let's have a battle, like a contest." She's the one who offers to make a contest to see who can take out the more of these people, these raiders. She's the one who sets that up. Defenseless. She kicks as much ass as he does. That the sequence is that by the end of it, there's only one guy remaining and they're tied. Defenseless. She kicks so much ass in that first scene. This is one of the very first female scenes in the book. The first action sequence features a female being on equal footing in terms of action to the guy and their boyfriend and girlfriend, and they're both kicking ass in the same level. They're 1, 2, 2, 3, 3. They're going like that, essentially. So, again, that is me defending my book because I do feel like this is very inaccurate. I'm gonna hold firm on this one because I feel this is very misleading to people who are reading this. Again, the very first scene. Now, let's just keep going throughout. So I'll leave that one example there, and we'll continue moving forward. So I'm just gonna read it as I want to. The female sex lacks agency. So, again, what does that mean? Lacks agency, like taking action, like stepping up, like there's a girl who's not lustful or sexful, by the way, in the story. Her agency is almost lost, let's say, when she first obtains her powers, because all of the people in this book gain powers or have them at birth. So she recognizes this, and then she steps up and says, yeah, I'm going to take ownership of the thing that you're going to try to mock me for. I'm going to step ahead of this, and I'm going to take agency in that. I'm not going to let you step all over me. So again, that's a lie. That is just lying to the people reading this review. Again, so now I would really want an example of something that would negate the example I just gave. And their motivations are ruled by sex or the male gaze. So yes, sexual attraction between there are sexual attractions in my book between men and women. That is true, boyfriend and girlfriend. There's sexual attraction for men on men. There's a gay sex scene in my book, as well as a lesbian kiss. And by the way, this is before woke even became a thing. This is published in 2014. This is before woke became relevant in terms of like social media and like everyone using that word in the political sphere. This is before that, and that's what I was writing. So this isn't just one attraction to one. That's also not even true. So again, that's another lie, or she didn't include that, which feels very like disingenuous to a degree. I don't know. Their actions and speech sound as if someone who doesn't understand a woman. So again, I want an example of what that means. Like, doesn't talk to women and does not hold much respect for women when I give them so much to do, when I have them kick so much ass, and there's one female in this entire book, out of all of them, one that is like more on the feminine side of the spectrum, one that I can recall from memory, one. So that's sexism for you. Okay. But their image, I find it distasteful that the females' characters go through as much as the males, if not worse, but their image is pristine, by the way. So are their males. So are the males. The gay character, the lizard, the scaly, has a scene where he's sexy and has his scaly shirt off and has gay sex, okay? Let's be clear, I did that for the scalies before I even knew what scalers were, okay? So don't get it twisted. I thought of the very gay, scene. And beautiful for male consumption and female consumption. It goes both ways. I'm just gotta put that out there, despite their surroundings. Alright. So this is sort of a follow-up. There is a lot of sexual domination that needs to be checked. Please provide an example of what domination means. I'm not sure. Acts of molestation. I think I know what that's a reference to, but it could be wrong. I don't know. Again, please provide an example, because I think I know what that means. But I can't be say for sure. And sexual manipulation. Coercion and assault are thrown in, not for meaning, but just because the act of sexual dominance is degrading and dehumanizing. No, that is not true. The point of the whole sex thing is that it's in line with the swearing thing. It's because there is a state of lawlessness. There are no rules in the world that they live in, this area that they live in. So both sexes, men and women, are going to take advantage of that. This sphere, and take advantage of the sexual because there are no rules. That's the whole point. That's the point of the lawlessness, is to show what that would look like, because I don't think we get enough stories with that, quite frankly, of what lawlessness would like its full extent, because I don't think a lot of people go there. That's why I wanted to go there. And for those who have been affected by... sorry, I went a bit ahead there. It is unnecessary, cringy, distasteful. And for those who have been affected by those things, triggering. Which is, by the way, why I have my thing at the beginning where I mentioned that the book contains this stuff. So if people read that to that point, that's sort of on them. I'm sorry, but that's true. If you give a warning, a spoiler warning, and you continue to watch the video, that's on you. You cannot blame the person who made the video at that point. You can't. You cannot. There's the disclaimer at the beginning of the book. Come on. Please come on. Please have a little bit more good faith on this review. Please. Manipulation does not have to include rape. And by the way, yes, the story did contain rape. Displaying power over someone does not have to include rape. But the reason I wanted to include something so extreme at the time was because I wanted to show how scary that shit is. And by the way, there's an entire movie about child predators, Sound of Freedom. I haven't watched it yet. But like, yeah, I wanted to show people even way back then that, yeah, this shit is scary. And we don't get a lot of stories about this sort of subject matter. And that's explicitly, especially in 2014 when I was writing this, I was not, reading about any of this stuff. But I knew about it. So I wanted to include it because there wasn't any of it. So, no, that's not the case. Like, I want people to know that it's still a thing, at that time. Alright. So this one goes number 4. Oh, and she skips to number 6, by the way, later on. Timing is way off. Now, I'm not sure what that means. What is years to someone is minutes to others. Again, I'm not sure what that sentence means. You might want to... delve into that a little bit more. Just like in real life, a region's most wealthy citizens do not live close to those they deem lesser than or beneath them, which is explicitly why I built a world where a wealthy civilization was right next to a slummy one. That was to have those two extremes at right at odds next to each other. That's sort of, again, one of the big points of the book. So again, this says this is fantasy. What do you mean? What are you bringing realistic stuff into, like, in this scenario? Like, I don't know, that those two things don't seem to make sense together. Anyway, beneath him, access to those residences are not easy to come by, and if anything, extra security is recruited to make sure that those deemed lesser than cannot get in. But those who are considered lesser than secretly have more power than those who are in the capital, saying, "We're breaking into the capital from your ragtag hideout on the beach with no plan in the span of 30 minutes is unbelievable." That is not true. I suppose it. No, I would want to... Actually, no, let me take that back. I would actually want an example here, because I think I know what she's talking about. But again, I would want to make sure. Because Zeke's flaw as a character is that he kind of just goes willy-nilly with stuff. Like, he doesn't really think of plans all that often. Like, that's one of his biggest flaws, and like he makes things fall apart a lot more than, again, that's sort of, again, the antithesis of a lot of these things. this is the part of what I had mentioned earlier with tasks being too easy for the main characters, but you did not give an example, so I don't know what you're actually talking about, and nor do the people now seeing this. How is someone able to lose their entire family by day and by nightfall, secure an uninhibited place to live in a new part of town with a thorough understanding of their powers? Please provide the specific example, because I have no clue who you're talking about. Literally, I have no clue. Like, literally, I have no clue who that's in reference to. So now, I have to think of all of my 30 plus characters and be like, which character went through a 1-day sequence where they had to figure their shit out? I have no clue. Thanks for nothing. Literally, thanks for nothing. God, Jesus Christ. It's not just physical or chronological space either. It's mental space. Yes. When something traumatic happens to someone, they need the mental time and space to expect it or not. Or because of the situation they are in, they are continued to forced to adapt at a rapid pace. That is also simultaneously true. So that is not the only truth in the matter, so don't pretend that it is the only truth, please. And process the information and have time, then shape into a new character. Well, no, you wouldn't want to shape into a new character, you want to develop the same character. Just to be clear, re-edit that sentence. Because you don't want a new character, you want to adapt your current character. When you don't offer your characters the chances to think on events and actions prior, there isn't room for any real character development. What? What do you mean? Please specify what that means. Like, the character development is, like, happening, like, faster, if anything. Again, they're forced to develop faster. If anything, it's the complete opposite of what you're saying. They're hollow puppets, and we don't care about them. So I guess their gruesome and bad backstories did not make you care about them? What the fuck? Wow. How inhuman of you, right? How not human of you to not care about these individuals. Jesus Christ. Okay, so we skip a point. 5. 6. There was one part of the story where I did have a genuine laugh. When a character finished his gruesome... See? She even admits it in the next paragraph. Gruesome, horrendous tale... But yet previously said hollow puppet. So which is it? Is it someone who's been through a lot of shit, or is it a puppet? You can't have it be a lot of that stuff, but then be a puppet. Those two things are completely in opposite spectrum from one another if you're talking about critique. So please make up your mind about which one you're talking about. Horrendous tale. His audience replies with, "So you're bisexual? That's cool, by the way. Bisexuality in 2014, by the way. Thank you for at least getting a laugh, because my comedy is very poor. My comedic timing is very poor. I don't consider myself a comedian, so thank you for finding that line very funny. I do appreciate that. I do appreciate that paragraph. Thank you for the one nice thing you said about my book. It honestly had me laughing for a while. Thank you." To the author's disappointment, I was not able to finish the entire story. Reading the story was like the start/stop motion when a parent teaches their child how to move and break, and it was honestly giving me a headache. The author has a fantastic premise with the opportunity to make this into an exciting adventure. I know it's not what they might want to hear, but as I mentioned, it would be best to take a break from writing to study the fundamentals of storytelling. And again, as an award-winning writer, third place award-winning writer, and someone who's been reviewing movies in terms of storytelling specifically, I'm pretty sure I have well adapted my ability to storytell in a fantastical way. So here we have our first 3-star review. I don't think I'm going to be able to pronounce her name. I do apologize. Aisu Tamara Prady, and the rest of it's unfortunately cut off, so I'm not sure what the rest of that is. Alright, so book Syndicate X by Thomas Wesley Jr. Book reviewer Coco Yuiza Tamara Pare. Oh, that was the end of her name. Weird that it does the ... then. Okay. A first attempt at writing by the author. It is a slum life story about gangsterism and battles between humans, people, and creatures in a chaotic slum. The story is told in the first-person narrative about himself, his friends, and girlfriend from childhood. The story depicts a life of betting, slum life with no rules. So she understood it. She understood that there were literally no rules. Thank you for recognizing that that's what I was going for. And filled with stealing, killing, and raping. Jungle life in the forest, expose of national security, life of a life buoyer, diver. I'm not really sure what that one is reference to. By water travels, cannibalism, robot attacks. So this is actually where I can take a potential critique on this from, is that mayhaps I actually dove into too much territory and like, see, from a positive review, I'm actually thinking about like, oh man, was I too broad in the amount of themes that I was trying to tackle at the time? This actually has more critique than that entire previous review, and it's positive. It's at least 3 stars, so thank you for making me considering that for a 3-star review. That is actually something that I'm curious about. Parental care, music, and its power to captivate its people despite their ordeals. Gay life, yes, thank you. Talk show and entertainment, relationship and friendship. Insecurity, love, teamwork, fire, emergency, advocacy for protective sex, television broadcasting, reporting, romance, planning, planet cloning, amongst others. Whew! Again, I can actually see, I can actually pinpoint a potential critique within that. Again, it was, is that too much theming, or lessons learned from the book. The need to have an emergent exit route for escape in a building in event of fire, just as the door of the roof used by the narrator. Oh, I actually know what that's in reference to. I almost didn't catch it. I know what that's in reference. I actually know what that's in reference to. Okay. Thank you for actually, like, giving, like, enough context, so I'm like, right. Oh, and look! This reviewer actually names the character, so I actually know who she's referring to. Thank you. Thank you. Please name the character you're referring to so I know what you're talking about. The proposed negotiation between Bernard and the creatures, in the trickery of Bernard in hoarding the real facts while putting forward that the creatures can have Kalia, while they have returned to Earth, shows how trickery and dangerous negotiations can sometimes be when not supervised by a third-party neutral. The story depicts the helplessness of the police, and by the way, I just want to put an asterisk on that one. The police do step up in a point of the story. At least 2 of them do. Just gonna point that out. I'm not a complete, anti-police person. I just wanted to point out, like, sometimes the police can be, helpless and some of them can step up. I wanted to make that split very, very clear in my story, and I want to make that very, very clear here. It tells on how certain cases of crime and insecurity the police ends up being attacked and outnumbered, thus needing protection rather than giving protection. Application of lessons learned from the story read: the writer doesn't give solutions for the problems raised and only paints law enforcement as helpless, which again I would put the asterisk there, of the stepping up of the two officers that do actually manage to do something there. Out of the how many police... I don't remember how many police officers were actually in the book. I don't remember. Outnumbered and attacked by creatures which are not human. Such a situation to mind will call for equality and police staff ratio to population, a reskilling and training when necessary. Alright. So, we have another review by Marilyn Maurice. I'm not sure if I pronounced that last name correctly. I do apologize. 63 reviews. It's a 2 out of 2.5, which that looks like 3 full stars, so I'm assuming you can't do like half stars on this platform, I guess. The story is promising, and having several POV points of view make it complete, but it's a mess. Okay, please clarify. The POV, the point of view, change a lot in the same chapter, but that's sort of like why I make the distinction. Like when it's about a character, for example, I do like a paragraph, and then if a new character is coming into the situation, new paragraph. If they're entering a new space, new paragraph. If they're, like, that's how I provide my paragraph. So I'm not sure why that's messy. If anything, I would hope that would come across as organized, but I guess not. Again, I wish she would clarify that a bit better. In the same chapter, I personally think that each chapter needs only 1 or 2 POV max. Why? Why? There are so many characters in this book. There's so many characters in this book. I need to like make sure that like they have enough space for the allotted time that's in my book. Max is making sure we can follow all characters, and making sure we can follow all characters, and it make complicated to follow correctly the plot line. Also, we miss a prequel. Interesting note, because actually that was something I was thinking about, but my story wasn't successful, so I can't do that. I mean, at least an explanation about why they are there on that planet. Again, good story idea, but messy written for me. That was not a very good review. I'm not gonna front. That was very short and very not well. That didn't teach me anything about as the writer. I don't know what to fix. Like, again, I wish she would clarify why 1 or 2 characters needs to be the max for a chapter. That rule seems very, very bizarre. That seems like a very anti-writing rule almost. Like, why would you condense it to only 2? That doesn't make any sense to me. Unless, like, that chapter only has 2 characters that are needed for that chapter, then sure. But, like, that almost seems like the harder exception to the rule rather than what it ought to be. So, again, I'm very confused. Anyway, we're at our next review. Aline, and I apologize if I mispronounce, Fedanine. Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know how to say that last name. 8 reviews. The story with 3 stars, 2020. The story is very dynamic and interesting. but the scenes of violence and sex make it a little tiring to read. God damn it! You didn't understand the point, please. The whole point was that the lawlessness led to those things. Oh man. Oh man. God damn it. All the elements of a good fantasy are present, but the descriptions. Please provide an example of... Because I do give descriptions, so I'm not sure what that means. Which are what make the reader immerse themselves in reading. Are short and shallow. Please give an example of what description is short and shallow. Please give an example. Please, please, please give an example, because I don't know what to look at. It's a good book, but it needs to be fine-tuned for the story and narrative. Again. Oh, I should comment on some of these, maybe, at some point. I never thought to do that. That'd be a fun little exercise, especially for the individual that said that my book. Oh, we're back. We're back with the sexism. Are you ready, folks? We have Giuseppe with 5 reviews, and 2 stars. 2023, very current reviewer. This book was kinda eh. The main character was well developed, which is good. Hey, thank you. Some parts that I didn't like were that the author seemed to be very sexist. Again, think back to what I said earlier about the other person that said that. Please provide an example of what would constitute sexism, because I don't think you can actually give me one at this point. I'm sorry, but I'm gonna have to bad faith this one because of the previous review. Otherwise, I don't know what that means. I don't know what constitute sexism from the examples that I could give that are in the book. And mostly the timing was very off. Not sure what that means. That's a sentence that didn't describe anything. So thank you for nothing. It was a bit hard to read this book, but if someone decides to read it for it, I guess, in my opinion, it needs editing on a lot of parts. Wouldn't recommend it, though. Okay, so whatever. That was a very non-helpful review. Thank you for that. We have 2 stars, and Hilario, 47 reviews, 2020. The author is on to something here, though I feel like more work is needed to eliminate the chinks, the hitches, and the glitches in the book, and it will finally come full circle. That is very vague. I'm sorry. That is very vague. I don't know what chinks, hitches, and glitches are referring to. Please provide any examples. Again, that would be very beneficial to me. We have Dennis with 4. We have our first 4-star review. 5 reviews. The character stories are built in a way that you'd be interested to know more of the coming events. Its story is very touching and lovely too. Wow, we got the complete opposite of this individual, so thank you. The language used makes you picture the whole scenario. Wow, someone who thinks that I use descriptions really well. Huh. Interesting that I can get the complete inverse and a completely different reviewer. So now I don't know which way it is. Thanks. But thanks though for that for this individual for saying as such in an astonishing way. Can't say I'm not interested highly with the book. It's a great paperwork with a smiley face emoji. Well, thank you. There's no criticisms there, so there's not much else to say on that regard. And lastly, we have Becca Butchered. And I'm going to click show more. 40 reviews. Syndicate X has all the trappings of a good sci-fi fantasy, which sounds good. Other worlds, superpowers, villains, and heroes, and lots of action/battles. Yes, the author has his main character well developed. All dialogue and reactions are consistent. Okay, that sounds very positive. This is clearly a passion of the heart. That is to say that much of the action description details remain in the author's heart. not on the paper. What the fuck does that mean? I'm sorry, but how did you 180 that hard? And what, please clarify what that means, because I'm pretty sure I had a lot of rage in my heart at the time, because of what I was told I couldn't do, which was publish this book in the first place. So I had at least that going for me. At minimum, I had that going for me. So just to tell you, not on paper, additions/edits and clarifications are needed, which again I'm republishing or at least at the bare minimum re-editing of my book. So yeah, so I did mention how I was going to comment potentially, and I might do that off camera, just because I need to think about what I'm going to say to who I want to say it to, and really try to navigate some of the individuals. I try to gauge what they meant, perhaps get some clarifications if they're still around to do so. I don't know if people who visit the reviewers who visit the site would get notifications when you get a comment. So I don't know if doing that would even be useful at all. But so yeah. What I got from that was unironically the best review was the one that said all the broader themes and the recognition that mayhaps that I divulged too much theming into my book. That is the one solid critique that I could find in all of these reviews, and that came from a 3-star good review, by the way, of the book. So, to those reviewers out there, please, for the love of God, provide examples. You have permission to do so. You have explicit permissions to take segments of the book if you're reviewing the book and use them, so please do that to solidify what you're talking about, because otherwise I have no clue, or I have to think about it and try to best guess it, or any number of those things. And again, as someone who wants to publish my book or republish my book, that's going to make my work that much harder. I don't know if I will be able to achieve all of those things if I don't know what I'm looking for and where I would be looking for it. And even if it's there to begin with, the whole sexism thing, because I am baffled by that, by those statements, quite frankly, considering how much ass the ladies kick and how much sex appeal is on both sides. Just so I'm clear that there's very explicit, when it comes to the whole sexuality thing, I think it's if you're going to sexualize the women's, then you ought to sexualize the men's too, which I do in my book, as I provided that example. So yeah, that is as much as I can say for this. I'm again still currently figuring out whatever those chinks and glitches are, because those terms are all very vague. So yeah, that was an interesting for what is one of my longest videos yet. So thank you for taking that journey with me if you have stuck around for its entirety. If you ended up enjoying this review of reviews, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. And hey, when you make a comment, make sure to, specify whatever you're talking about, even if it's to say I'm a sexist, even if it's to reinforce something that was said. please specify what you mean by that. Anyway, like, comment, and subscribe. Also, make sure to check out those links in the description. One will head you over to my petition to help out all smaller YouTubers, all of them, because we all need a larger voice on here in the platform of YouTube. Second and third to my Patreon and PayPal, where you can help support this apparent sexism here, I suppose. Or 2014 me, I should rather say. This 2014 sexism of me. You can help not support that, because I was never that to begin with. And you can also join my Discord, where you can shill all of your content for free, despite whatever sex you are. Imagine that. And until next time, everybody, bye-bye!